Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel for a figure showcase special. And it does feel like I haven't done one of these in a while, but just as a little refresher on these videos are the ones I'm going to be trying to make once I've completed a line. Now, it doesn't mean that I have every figure from that line, but does mean that I'm at a point where I can personally wrap up that line of figures, be it from a movie, a TV show, or whatever, at least to my satisfaction. So for today's installment, after what felt like a bit of a long time, we're going to take a quick look at my pickups from Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home, which has to be one of the most impressive lines Hot Toys has done to date, especially when you consider all the deluxe versions with their substantial diorama pieces. So I'll start by telling you which ones I didn't pick up, which were the Doctor Strange, the battling version, promo version edition Spider-Man, and the final scene Spider-Man, although that one hasn't even been released yet. For the Doctor Strange, I just felt like the figure was very similar to others I own, with the big differentiator essentially being that incredible base and the cube accessory. Now look, I won't say never to that figure, but I'm unlikely to pick that one up unless he goes on major sale or I get him for a great deal. Same holds true for the promo battling version of Spider-Man in his advanced suit. There just weren't enough differences for me personally from the previous movie to warrant picking him up, especially with all the other figures we were getting. And then for the final scene one, this one was tempting to me, and I was thinking about getting it, and that might change once he gets released. But we saw him for just a few seconds, and with Spider-Man 4 incoming, I have a feeling I'll have another chance to pick it up, even if I do have to wait a little bit. So those were the ones that I passed on for now. But the whole premise of No Way Home was centered on having our three different Spider-Man iterations come together in one movie. So getting the Tobey, Andrew, and Tom Holland versions were key for me. And standing there with their respective suits, it's just amazing how different they are. Granted, the Tobey and Andrew are closer in design than the Tom Holland suit from the movie, which stands in huge contrast. But even between them, the eyes with the Andrew Garfield having those larger comic-based ones, and even the subtle differences between the webbing, with the Tobey version having a shinier, more spread out set of lines, while the Andrew has that tighter pattern with the darker webbing. It's just impressive how different they are and how great they look together. And look, while I know this version of the Tom Holland suit was far from anyone's favorite, I love the detail work on the red, and again, the differences between it and the others, as well as the black and red pattern, which would switch over to the blue for the end of the movie, but they just look great together. And it's awesome having that distinctive Spider-Man logo on each of them. Although I always did like that Andrew Garfield version with the longer legs. So just great having them in hand. But of course, one of the other appealing things that I wanted with these three different versions were the three different sculpts. And I do think Hot Toys did a good job here. While I do have issues with the Andrew Garfield overall, especially with the posability for the sculpts, I do think as far as the sculpt itself, the unmasked versions, they're decent likenesses. Without a doubt, for me, my favorite has to be the Tobey sculpt. I feel like Hot Toys knocked this one out of the park, and it does look, especially next to the Tom Holland sculpt, like an older, more mature person. And this sculpt does benefit from some of the updated detail work and paint apps we've been seeing in recent Hot Toys releases. And it becomes a little more obvious when you compare to the Tom Holland one. That one is still great and has that likeness to him, and I like the detail work on the sculpted hair, but it does feel a little softer than the other two Spideys. Now, that could also be attributed to Tom Holland being younger, but I like being, but it's something that I noticed. Now, for me, I like being able to see their faces. It's something that I'm probably going to have to continue to debate with myself in terms of how I'm going to display them, because while I love seeing the different mask versions all together, there's something in me that really wants to try to display the sculpts as well, because they are really solid and well done, and it'll give me a little variety instead of just having every Spidey with the mask on. Now, look, the other big selling point for me with these deluxe editions were the diorama bases. I'm a sucker for them. I think if done well, they really do tend to elevate a display, and each version of Spidey included a unique piece that when put together, it's just almost overwhelming. First of all, from sheer scale, and second of all, from how visually striking everything is. Tobey comes with the biggest base of all, which consists of a transforming Sandman, essentially with some debris, and a Doc Ock tentacle. The Andrew version was designed to work with the lizard base, which again, just absolutely stunning with the upper lizard torso emerging from the rubble, and those hints of Electro's effects littered throughout. It was a great way for Hot Toys to get us two of the film's villains without having to create a full figure, and making them visually interesting enough that even in a diorama, they look great. For the Tom Holland, you get just a base packed with debris, and while we don't see a full villain reveal, there are those hints of Doc Ock with the two tentacles emerging from the rear, as well as the pumpkin bombs with smoke effects. With the debris, all of these just fit perfectly together, letting you recreate moments from that final battle on Liberty Island. Now, I do have one other Spidey from the movie that I'm going to slide in here, and that's the gold and black suit version, which, as we all know at this point, is basically the Tom Holland advanced suit, the advanced suit flipped inside out. This one was probably the most controversial of the releases from the movie. When it launched, it was a different color scheme, and it was updated to more closely reflect what was seen in the film. But still, even with those updates, there were still a bunch of inaccuracies, and also missing accessories. While we do get the magical effect pieces, which make it look unique again, with the gauntlet and those webbing pieces, it's missing items like the taped on phone on his chest and the like. Now, I still like the figure. I think it's done really well, even with all those issues. And while I do think it's a nice figure, I will admit that it does seem like a bit of an outlier. So it'll be one to think about how I'm going to properly display. And if you're looking to pass on one, it's definitely one that you can probably put to the bottom of the list. Now, let's switch over to the villains, and before jumping into the line, let's take a look at the two versions of Green Goblin we got. Now, you have the Raimi style version with the highly memorable Goblin helmet and the very clean, uncluttered look, and that stands right next to the more MCU version of the character that has some of those key comic add-ons like the purple hood as well as the tan bag over his shoulder. But with both figures standing next to each other, it's incredible how different they look. The final battle Goblin is significantly different from the original, and while it's supposed to be just a heavily modified suit, it's striking how much different of a design it is from the base one that just visually pops. And again, it's more in line with that MCU look that tends to be a little busier. And the other thing that I love about these, honestly, what's a Goblin without the glider? And Hot Toys killed it with these. Even though they're both identical here, just the engineering and the shelf presence, it's another awesome addition. And you can kind of start seeing the scale of the figures again with the base and the accessories. Now, let's take a look at the villains from the movie all put together. And you'll see a reappearance of the diorama displays because that's again how Hot Toys was able to give us a version of the Lizard and Sandman. And obviously we took a look at both Goblins. But there were two other pivotal characters, and those were Doc Ock and Electro. And honestly, what's really surprising here is that Electro, even as complex as he is, looks like the simplest of all these releases because he's just a more basic figure when you compare him to the Goblins with the glider, the Doc Ock with the tentacles, and all the Spider-Man figures with the deluxe bases. So he's the one that takes up the least amount of space. But look, it's a really well done figure, and I do think that Electro benefited the most from his jump to the MCU. The original form he had in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a blue electric version that Hot Toys also released as a figure, but being able to see the Jamie Foxx sculpt is key here. And in addition, the clothes look great with a ton of detail work and just an overall visually more striking look that does provide some nice references to the baseline material, including that nice nod to the mask with that effect piece. And then look at Doc Ock. I know there were questions about the sculpt, but the shelf presence on this one, especially with those beautifully done tentacle arms, I have to give a ton of credit to Hot Toys for the engineering that went into these, because one, they look visually stunning, they're also highly posable. And for me, that was one of the reasons that this became one of the big figures of the year for me. Even with a sculpt that was far from the best, I just was very impressed by how the package looked overall. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I almost think the villains from the line turned out even better than the Spidey figures. But overall, it just feels like a great line. And look, I would be remiss if I didn't have some video of the full line assembled. First thing you'll notice, this is a Space Killer. I have some module cases coming in, and I think this line by itself, based on the size of the bases, the gliders, and Doc Ock's tentacles, is going to claim some decent amount of real estate. But I'm floored. Besides the Avengers Endgame line, which looked great, this is easily one of the best near-complete Marvel lines Hot Toys has given us in recent years. And honestly, I'm not sure when we'll get another line like this. Unless Deadpool and Wolverine drop some insanity on us, this might be one of the biggest lines we'll get for a while from Marvel. And looking at this, I do have moments where I wonder if I should go back and pick up some of the other figures in the line, in particular that Doctor Strange. But again, maybe if I get him for a good deal, I'll add him in. For now, this is my final version of the Spider-Man No Way Home line, and I can't tell you enough how impressed I am by what Hot Toys was able to deliver here. It's a beautiful line overall, and honestly, even with faults, I think put together here, it's hard not to be amazed by how striking this all looks. So that was a quick look at the Spider-Man No Way Home line from Hot Toys. As is normal, I do feel like while each figure is stunning in its own right, in aggregate the collection just goes to a totally different level and has easily become one of my favorites. So let me know your thoughts, and as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider dropping a comment, a like, or subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.